All right. That's good. We're recording, I think, now.
Yep. Yeah, it's still loading on my screen. I always feel like it's not really recording until it opens, but it probably is when it gives the announcement. I don't know if we have to record what we just said, if it's something important enough to just do, but the basic thing we were just talking about before we turned on the recording is there's a released Bootstrap 5.2, which we just confirmed is in beta. That is now the default version of Bootstrap for DocAssemble. And I was mentioning that it would be really nice to have some automated way for people, or mostly automated way for people to build a Bootstrap theme that does not require downloading and compiling the source by hand. But I have not found a theme generator online that works that way yet, reliably, unfortunately. So that does seem worth tracking somewhere. I'm not sure where to put an issue like that. Should it go on assembly line? Should it go on our documentation page? Because that's where we document building the theme.
Maybe an assembly line until we have a solution. And if that solution ends up being, well, and hopefully the solution ends up being there's a website that works that we can use for that, then we can just document it and move that issue to the documentation.
Okay, I'll do that. That's okay. That seems like a reasonable.
Yeah, because the documentation stuff sometimes seems like it's, yeah, I don't know what I was going to do.
The point is, I want people to be able to generate a theme where all that they have to change is the CSS variables, like the SCSS variables, that is, like the colors, which is most, and it works out of the box. For some reason, the ones that I found add their own little flair to it that is not there when I edit the SCSS file and generate it from source. And that special flair breaks the theme. So
Yeah. Yep.
in various ways that don't always seem predictable. It wouldn't necessarily be hard to write it, but it feels very redundant for us to build that feature.
And there's another thing to maintain, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's something we should have to do. I think it's just that people use Bootstrap in really different ways than DocAssemble does. Like when they're generating it, it's for a whole site. They're not just trying to build a theme that gets plugged into a different site. Maybe, I don't really know. Guess I can share my screen while I type, so at least there's something to see.
Header sizes? Oh, that's fonts. So never mind.
Say explicitly size and font family. It's like a weird thing that I guess it's a choice that Jonathan made for how to use the Bootstrap theme. That means you have to always customize this property. Because it's like in the theme previews, you'll see the primary color is usually used for the nav bar, which is black here. But DocAssemble uses the BG dark property for the nav bar instead. So I always...
It's a bit problematic for accessibility, but...
Why is that?
Because BG Dark is supposed to be if the person chooses for accessibility a dark theme. And right now the site is on a light theme, if I understand correctly. And so if they switch, I'm not sure how that'll behave.
Is that a
Like-
thing that you can do? Is that a thing that is available for for accessibility purposes, like in like the user can choose just the different theme? Is that a thing that's packed into the CSS?
I'm not
Gotcha.
sure. I'm not sure it's automatic, but I think that's what it was meant to be for Bootstrap. So people might have
Okay.
been expected to like build that in themselves, like build the switchable feature in themselves. But I believe that's what it was meant for. It was meant for the user to be able to choose among different themes, right? So like,
Yeah.
I
There's a
could
lot
be
of-
wrong.
There's
could
a
be
lot. I
wrong.
feel like there's been a lot of websites that have started doing like light and dark theme stuff, and I don't know
How they
what's,
do
like,
it.
the best.
Yeah.
Less of how they do it and more of like what's the settled way or like best way to go about like actually respecting like some accessibility settings that a user has on their computer,
Yep.
because that feels like it would be the best way. But then it also does add a lot more. If we want to expose that, that adds a lot more like design work
You
to
have to
make
have
sure your
Yeah.
thing works.
Two
both.
themes.
Much more research, et cetera, et cetera.
So it's not necessarily an accessibility issue with the way that features that are exposed and available in DocAssembly right now, but
It's
it
a-
is like a
It's a
limitation on.
potential, yeah, it's a potential accessibility limitation if people want to make their DocAssembly interviews more accessible.
I wouldn't go after this as low hanging fruit. This would be much more work. Just FYI. I'm just saying, keep an eye on it.
BG Dark thing. You mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here's our agenda. I just wanted to just float to the top a couple of open pull requests and just see if we think about them. Lily has said she's taking off the summer. Hopefully we'll see her back in the fall. But one of the PRs is hers, which I hadn't even realized was open until she bumped it last week. So, but let's start with the documentation page ones, because everyone here should be able to answer those questions. Let's see. Sorry, I'm slow today. Just jump over here. So Bryce had opened 2 pull requests. I guess this one, Michelle, you had some feedback on. I don't know. It wasn't clear to me if it's ready to merge though. But my sense is we probably should just kind of, it's good to get feedback, but I don't see a good reason to have like a long open pull request for pull.
Okay, yeah, that's my fault. I should have just bridged it.
I think I said that
I
like
think, yeah, no, I think
as long
you
as
did
it was
say,
taken care of, it could be ready for merging.
Okay.
okay,
I just wanted to get us all on the same page on it. So yeah, you do say that right here. So so should I go ahead and merge it?
yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Sorry, that's my fault. I'm bad on, usually, for some reason, usually if I notice comments instead of like approved, then I'll wait for another merge, and I just didn't read close enough. That's my fault.
No worries.
Should I delete the branch?
Yeah,
I guess my default is too. Okay.
because otherwise, I guess it doesn't matter too much for the documentation, but it gets confusing when you try and pull things in a DocAssembly, and there are a lot of old open branches. And this one, the style one, from what I understand, it's just the landing screen that needed a bit more polish, or the hero page.
Yeah, to me it is, and it is totally just a matter of opinion. But it's easy for me to sign off if it looks fairly similar, like at a first open to this. That's kind of what I was thinking when I said let's make the styles look the same.
I see.
Which
Okay.
obviously it is a different layout.
Yeah. and might not necessarily need. The spot stuff doesn't make sense, so I'm not sure what would go in its place. Maybe just a big search bar, but
No, I don't think we need a search bar. What I'm saying is like if the colors, when you open it, if the colors kind of give you the same impression, then it will like have a consistent feel when you go to the next page.
Cool.
So this is what it looked like here, which is totally all about opinion. But it was like, I noticed there's just white, whereas the Court Forms Online page, it's on this light blue color. We have this dark blue as the prominent color, and then this light blue for buttons.
That's fair.
And then the secondary button is a different color altogether too.
That blue is a bit hard to read on the black. I don't know if that's for everybody.
It is, and I think that was one of things that he pointed out that I hadn't noticed because the hero page is. I've never just been
on the hero page for sure.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of it. And I always just try and skip through it really quick, and so I didn't take a close look at that when I was changing it. But I can try and make it look closer to just the colors we have. I also may or may not get rid of the animation. Is there any opposition to that?
It's kind of silly because it's just like a white box that's animated. So I'm cool with that.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't customize this a lot. I wanted to put in some icons. So but the rest is mostly just the way it came out of the box from DocuSource default theme. So I am not attached to any part of this design.
Cool.
I think it's nice to have a landing page, but I don't care.
No, I agree. I like the content. It was just a matter of, I think with I think Either way, I'll take another look at that. That had mostly been a thing I did really quick and then got wrapped up with emailing stuff. And so
it is not a high priority issue. So I just wanted to check in and see if there were blockers or if we're just going to pause on it. I mean, I know sometimes it's great just to like push through and work on something, and you're like, you know what? Now that we have feedback, I don't actually have time to look at it again for a while. That's fine. This isn't urgent.
That's right.
Okay. So that one I think is fine for this to stay open as long as it's due. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a blocker on it. Okay, let's look at the interview stats one. I thought for some reason that had already been merged because I didn't think I would. It's too bad that Lily's not here to talk about it. Because I don't feel like I would have merged the other changes without this being there. I guess I could probably look at it and see. I do want to make sure that it doesn't change any of the stuff in the existing stats page.
Yeah, and I don't think it does. It's only touching. Well, she added some kick out stuff, and it looks like mostly it's just some polishing stuff. It doesn't look like it's been mainly changed, but yeah, no, we should still probably take a look.
Okay. Oh, I see. It's checking to see if there's a title column. I don't know if that's a safe check or people might want to use title for other things. It's not like it's a little bit generic of a label. What do people think?
Just the variable interview title, or
sorry, I'm jumping. I know it's hard to read a pull request on screen while I'm scrolling around like crazy. So this check right here is looking for a column named title in the saved data. And then if it finds that column, it doesn't let you use the interview stats screen. It wants you to use the other interview. I think that kick out might not be right in all circumstances because people might use a column named title in the fields that they save.
Yeah, I'm confused on why. I'm confused on why we're kicking out on that.
Maybe we should just take out that screen and just let people who want to use that feature navigate to the right interview.
That, yeah, that feels right.
Okay.
Because they're slightly different, like features, right?
They are. I didn't necessarily expect them to be originally, but it does. But I think that is true.
I feel like I'd have to just do a closer look at this one because.
Do you want to take a look at it, Bryce? I mean, it's up to, if you want to.
Mhm.
I was just assuming I should add it to my to-do list, but if you are interested in it, you've touched the interview stats stuff the most, I guess.
Yeah, I've touched the interview stat stuff. I guess the thing I'm like blanking on is just the overarching purpose of this was just for interviews that have interviews whose main output is data is just like I guess I'm trying which I know that was the thing we were trying to add to the Weaver, but I'm blanking on what exactly was the main point of like adding this stuff to the interview stats. Is it just like optional and make option to do this without like the chart stuff?
I think there's some different kind of data analysis kind of stuff you can do with this feature that aren't in the existing stats page, which I would say like is not necessarily, I mean, it's here and there's like a rudimentary feature for it now. It's part of what Lily built, but I wasn't necessarily thinking that had to be in scope for this tool, right? Because you can download the data as an Excel spreadsheet and manipulate it there.
Yeah.
So it is a light touch new data analysis feature that lets you look at some summaries. I think that the idea is if you're using the Weaver to build a survey, you want to see the survey results, something like what Google Forms does, where it shows you the results and it lets you see some statistics in a summary form. But it isn't a feature that is needed by a current interview that I know of. So it's a little bit of a speculative feature.
Okay.
When we talked about building this feature into the Weaver to let people build forms that just collect data, the kind of survey that we were thinking of was like the one that we worked on for the Suffolk DA's office, where people can collect data about cases, something like that, where it's just a data collection interview. There really doesn't need to be a form at the end of it that it's printed out and saved in. You want to see the data in aggregate. But
yeah,
there, the summary feature is not so useful. You'd really want to just download it as an Excel spreadsheet and load it into your system to do whatever work you need to do on it. Or maybe even send it directly to some other database from the beginning.
Yeah. I was going to say we have, but I guess the part I'm confused about this is we already had a thing. Maybe it was not specifically usable for the anonymous part, but we already had like a way you can generate. Oh, just go to this URL and it will make the Excel spreadsheet for you, right? Okay.
We do have
I
that
see,
feature
sorry, I see
already.
you nodding.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I guess this is just minimal. Okay. At least knowing that, yeah, I can take a look and see if it's good, and at least make sure we don't duplicate too many things. So.
Okay.
I do like the look of the test stuff that she added. Like addition, like adding other more records that aren't specifically like the bare minimum stuff that I needed to do before. So I like that. That
nice.
So far.
That's good to see. Yeah. I guess we should think about the admin requirement, maybe. I don't know. it should be open to different group by default, or if we should let people run it out of the box with a custom group we just call like data viewers or something.
Yeah,
That doesn't have to be this pull request though.
yeah,
Make an
it
issue
feels
for
like that feels like a separate thing. But I at least do agree. It doesn't necessarily need to be admin, but it also feels like everyone's going to want to have their own specific rules on that, and so we just sort of need to make another, or you'll need to make another rule for that to work, I guess.
It's called, DocSum doesn't call them roles, right? It calls them privileges.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. It calls it just. And I don't think there are any. Yeah, none of them are very clearly like, yeah, this could be one that would have access to data. It feels they're all there.
Yeah.
So
But people can have more than one privilege, so it
yeah,
is easy enough for them to just say, okay, we're going to use the interview stats viewing privilege that doesn't exist yet, but we'll add it. It's going to have the same name, and therefore it will map onto that concept.
Okay.
I think it's not numeric. I think it's based on the string, the name of the role. Okay. That's the pull request reviews. If you want me to do any part of that, Bryce, I'm happy to jump on. I know you have a lot of things on your plate, so I'm not trying to add new stuff. But if you're interested in it and want to work on it, that's fine. You can just do the review and want me to make some of the code changes, I can do that.
yeah, I mean, that would be good.
Just let me know. And I'll jump on it. Michelle, this was yours, and I know this was something we had postponed for a little while. Do you think we'll be able to, is that the thing for us to spend today on? Do you want a longer conversation about it when we can do the whole hour on it? I think that was roughly what we had said at one point that we should do. I think that's actually put here on this agenda before we had anything else on the agenda. Is that right?
Yeah. I think we were carrying it over. I don't know if today is the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put that on for next week. If does that seem like a good week for it now?
Yeah, does at the moment. So
okay. I don't think it's urgent, so
okay.
I assume we might have to, I'm kind of thinking I might end up doing some work to finish the
income class.
Not the income class, but the
the
interview that Caroline's building around it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So then that would be a dependency of it at least.
Yeah,
but I don't
some
know.
of the names have changed since Carolyn and I went through the interview. I told her and she said it'd be fine, but then she was less happy about the idea later on of having to change names. So I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to I've already bugged people for ideas about this, so it doesn't have to be the first thing. These sound like they could be short kind of input kind of questions. You want to jump to this one?
Three is pretty short. I'm just trying to decide how much effort to put into, I'm changing file names and stuff to conform to like a more consistent format. The idea was that for one scenario, right, one test, you might download the same document multiple times. And then the code would have to make sure it has a unique name each of those times. But that is turning out to be incredibly difficult. So the question is it worth the work? Like, how often do people think you would download the same document, a document with the same name?
When we say
the
document,
thing is that
this...
in ours specifically in in assembly line specifically, there's a preview document and an actual document, and they both have the same name, and you might want to check both of them. But yeah.
You append the key to the name at least. I see what you mean there. If you want to check the preview, and so it's in one test run. There's the same document generated as a preview and as a final.
Yep.
That's the problem that we're running into.
Well, that's the like fictional scenario that I can imagine, can very clearly imagine happening.
I can imagine people wanting to download both, but I can't imagine, like the exact same document, maybe like the preview version. I can maybe imagine someone wanting to download it multiple times, but I can't imagine wanting to have multiple distinct copies of each downloaded, or like what you would do with that. That wouldn't be sort of a like normal, like it's something that you could want to test, but there's zero reason why you would want to. If I click the same download button on the screen twice, I download the exact same document, and I want to be able to compare that after the fact. That doesn't seem like
the
a thing
thing is
that test.
That's not a problem. It's just that the file will have the same name both times, and one will overwrite the other.
Yeah. Which I guess like I feel like, but even say if we took the idea of adding on like the key to it.
But
I can't think of another reason.
And unless we add that in assembly line, we would have to add that in assembly line.
Which we could.
Okay. I mean, we could.
It doesn't feel super wrong. It's not like it's necessarily data or like testing only information. It's like somehow, or at least it's machine readable information that shows that, yes, this is the preview version of a form, or yes, this is the final version of it.
Sure. I mean, I can see this problem happening in other systems, right? Is part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I couldn't think of a scenario where this would happen, that would be one thing. But I can see it happening in other people doing the same kind of thing. So the question is how much work to put into trying to make the document name actually unique.
Well, I do like the idea. So right now, no one really intentionally downloads the preview document, right? It's like generated, it's embedded on the page, but it's not something people intentionally download. It makes sense to me to put the key name there on our preview screen as part of the file name. That might mean having to figure out how to pass a parameter. Or the only thing is we don't really hard code the concept of preview and final anywhere. We wouldn't want to append final to the name.
Yeah.
Do we want to make that opinionated change? I guess we could set an overridable parameter that can be set when you initialize the .mail document. Like use preview key, no, true or false, and default it to true.
Sure.
That could be a way to make it backwards compatible.
Yeah.
That feels like a really good change for us to make. It's in scope. It's solving a real problem. I agree. I understand why you're saying you want to solve that. So I would be happy solving that problem that way. It's a low engineering lift.
Okay.
And postponing the other problem until we have a really specific scenario to evaluate it against.
So, yeah, I think it'll be something people will find confusing to discover, like to figure out that is going on. But maybe if we're really clear in the docs, that would help. I'm not sure.
I think that would be, I think that would help in the docs. I'm still sort of stuck on like what's a valid thing that you would actually want to test, which maybe is too opinionated of me. Of like you could come up with scenarios where you would want to download the same document twice, but like I can't imagine why that would be a part of a test.
Yep. So in the future, where in the ideal future where we can test PDFs against a, kind of a standard that they should match, you might want to test the output of the preview and the output of the final document. it's not as much of a problem in assembly line because we've made the document class, but if you
Yeah.
remember, that would have been a problem.
Well, no, sorry. I agree for preview versus final. That makes sense of like the same document is in the same thing, but you like at least like outside of that particular thing, like where would there be two different documents in the interview? Likely on the same page? Because I sometimes the page ID is appended to downloads, I think.
I don't have any other scenarios.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is just this is the only reason it's come up is because I know of a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
There's a test that's breaking now. That's what you mean?
No, I mean, I know of a scenario where this would break.
And that's the preview final one, right?
Yep. And that's one that I can see happening elsewhere in other people's systems.
But it does seem though that like the way to solve it is at the interview level. If you have a file that's generated with the same file name, that feels like an interview author design issue. I mean, we should solve it for people using the assembly line framework.
Sure. It would just like in general, our general guiding principle has been to be as flexible as possible when possible. Right.
Is that right?
So that's that, to be as permissible as possible. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not driving that particular repository. So
I mean, this has been a discussion in the group. So like elsewhere, when other decisions have come up, the choice has been to make it permissible.
My general guidance would be to try to solve problems that are in front of us when they're in front of us. Think about the future, but not design in a way that is too hard to achieve because we're not facing a problem we can actually encounter yet.
Okay, so we'll try to add that to the documentation and just kind of give up on this feature. While the other problem that arises that I was trying to solve was knowing when the document was downloaded. Right now, it just waits the entire amount of time that one gives it to wait. So, because it doesn't know when it can't detect when the document has been downloaded. So it just waits the maximum amount of time.
That does feel like a thing that could be improved, but that feels like a puppeteer thing that I don't know much about.
Yeah. I haven't found a way to pass in a callback. That's basically the whole problem, is that I can't detect when a file is done downloading. Actually, it'd be enough to detect when a file starts downloading. That would be sufficient for my purposes, but can't detect either of those.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
there's a couple other things I can try, and there are roads I can go down, but the question is really how long do I want to spend going down that road?
That is fair.
Or has started downloading, really. Whichever one is sufficient.
Oh, and that just happens. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at the technical reason of why, and that just happens because we start the download process by just a click on the page, and so somewhere in Puppeteer, you click on the page and it's starting a download somewhere in the steps, and we don't have any way to really access that we know of.
Yeah, the current way that we're trying to do it doesn't work for unclear reasons. I thought it used to work, but I couldn't track that down. And so, yes, and I've been trying to track down a way to make it work, but that has been eating up everything else. Okay. So, not that there's much else to eat up. There isn't a lot there, but it just I mean, I can go into the details if we want, but I don't know that y'all know enough about the various systems to make it that useful. Can't
Sounds like
detect.
this was setting off Bryce's spidey sense a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's a lot I could weigh in on it now.
If you want, Bryce, I can say a bit more about the problems. One is that we can't detect the file in the response. And that may be because it's opening in a new tab. But we can detect the new tab opening, but only in non-headless mode. In headless mode, it doesn't detect the tab opening, and that's what all the tests have to be in.
That's
Isn't
weird.
that great? Yeah, I know.
What actually happens when the new tab opens in headless mode? Is it's still like everything still works? It's just we have no like handle on it or whatever.
We have no detection that URL for that document has been opened.
Okay.
Can you right click and save as the link instead? Is it just a link?
There isn't a way to interact with the file like the file system. You can only interact with a page, and when you hit save as, it opens a file system dialog, and that's something we can't interact with.
You can't just invoke. Okay.
Not that I know of. I mean, like there are different roads to go down. But
is it P-U-P-P-T-E?
There you
One
go.
T.
So, and there might be something with the download settings that you might be able to change, but that's something to dig into. Seems like it should have a kind of a callback ability, but I haven't dug into that yet.
Yeah, it does feel like it should. That's why I'm like surprised about it. I'm glancing through a few other like Stack Overflows that are their solution to it is essentially like, just if it was specifically downloading images, and it was just their solution was just go to that image page and then download it directly, which is what I guess defeats the purpose of making sure the button works. But because we would want to still make sure the button works, we wouldn't want to like inspect and grab the URL that the button is going to and then like download that separately.
Well, you also would need to deal with authentication stuff if you did that, I think. So I think docassemble requires some.
Do you have to click it to have permission? So you're saying you can't just open, like say, right click open.
I mean, you might be able to right click.
You can do that.
You can't do right click open, I think, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you could interact with the right click menu.
I don't mean literally doing that, but just the equivalent. Like,
I don't think that's I don't think that's a thing that Java, because essentially Puppeteer is just you're interacting with a page via JavaScript, and so I don't know if that's a thing you can do in JavaScript. I know there's a click method, but I'm not an expert, but I don't feel like at least I've never come across a thing that's like all of the different options, because a lot of those are run by the browser itself and not necessarily like I think a lot of it go through the browser, which Puppeteer is not directly going through the browser, if I'm understanding correctly. But
so you open the image in the same tab, I'm assuming is the point, right? And then you click back when you're done inspecting it. Or is that what you're finding in the Stack Overflow pages? I'm wondering if that works with docassemble. If you could just skip the URL from the button, if it's an image, open it. If there's permissions related issues that would block you from being able to see the file, you didn't actually click the button to view it. You just visited the URL. I'm just wondering what process happens when you click the button to say, yeah, this person's authenticated to open it.
Yep, not sure. It's another route to go down.
I think that's a docassemble. That's like an interview specific thing of what the permissions are on that file. Like I know sometimes you can make them private or you can make them public. And I guess it's a matter of what, if you're already logged in through Puppeteer, like it looks, the suggestions in the Sacker book are just using like go to, which I'm assuming is just the equivalent of, like in the same tab, navigating to a thing, which makes me, that doesn't seem like it should reset any credentials that it's already, or like any cookies or whatever DocAssemble does. But
That's my guess too, is checking the cookies that are stored in your browser.
But yeah, but I don't know. It's one of those things. If there is no easy way to like check when things are downloading, then any of my intuitions of how Puppeteer should and shouldn't work are probably completely wrong. So
maybe.
But
we can add this though.
Yes, I'll at the very least the little bit of stuff that I have found, I'll copy paste here. If not, if there's not already an issue for it.
I don't know. There are several issues about downloading things, I think. So
okay, I'll try and find the right one and restart the discussion there.
Yeah, but you can also just write in here and paste in here for now if that.
Both is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I can try go to URL. But then how do I download from that URL?
Well, no, just going to the page, I think, from what I understand, is downloading it. Like the equivalent of if you go to a
but usually that just shows you the preview. Right? On the web page. I can try.
Yeah, no. The responses are doing something weird with like directly getting the response and directly writing that response to the disk, but I don't know if that does feel like the thing we could do. Whether or not it's the right thing is, I don't know.
Okay. Like, yeah. All right. We'll look into that. I guess the main question I'm trying to answer is how much more research is this worth?
So is this this is a different problem, Billy, right? So I think we're done with the downloaded
It's the same problem. It's the same. I guess it's not quite the same problem. It is a different problem, but if I solve one, I solve the other.
Why is that? Because you wanted to put a timestamp on the files instead?
Yep, because I need to know when they're downloaded so that I can change their name. Like that is another reason to know that they're downloaded.
I see. Okay.
I don't know if it's the right solution to put a timestamp on the file though, because you do solve part of the problem, but there's always a small chance of race conditions.
Not if they're on separate pages for sure. And it seems very unlikely you'd be downloading a document with the same name on the same page. And there isn't a race condition because the step doesn't move on until you can't download two documents at the same time.
So appending like a timestamp to the file could cause new problems for people, right? Because then it's an unpredictable file name that has a pattern that they could decode. But I'm not sure that would be easier for the developer.
It would at least make sure that both documents are downloaded.
I just want to separate the two problems. So I think
it
sounds like there's a good reason to.
It will be in date and time format. It won't just be a number.
They will need to parse the file name and figure out what part of it represents the date and time, right? There's two parts of the problems. Like one part is how do we make sure people don't download file names with the same name in a single test run, which I think that's a great problem for us to solve. And we figured out an approach that makes sense, that puts a little bit of onus onto the assembly line framework, which seems fair because other interview authors can solve it too. The not downloading, knowing when a file is done downloading, I'm assuming that's to help us speed up tests. Is that what your thought process is for why that was a good problem to solve, Bryce? Or was there another reason? That's what I was kind of intuiting.
Roughly, yeah.
So it sounds like it's not a super high priority thing, but it could help us speed up tests. But I would not tie
Yeah.
it to solving the unique download name because I don't really think it makes sense. That feels like we're solving a speculative problem in a way that adds more burden on developers instead of removing the burden.
Okay. I can't say I quite understand that explanation, but I'm willing to go with it, so that's fine.
I could be totally
how
wrong,
much-
but to me, it's like you have to figure out how to parse the file name to get, if you were like doing something in your test, you're like, I'm looking for this file to see what it is. That wasn't manual. I don't know.
I mean,
Maybe
it'd
it's
be
that
one
no one would be doing
scenario,
it
so if you
automated.
did it on a preview page, I mean, also the page ID would be added, not just the timestamp. So you'd know what page it was downloaded on.
That's right.
I mean, that's a lot of engineering to solve a problem we haven't really run into yet, right? That's, I guess, the big question. Like, it might end up being the better solution.
Well, remember that this was a problem that I did have a specific problem in mind until we decided that we'll change assembly line. So remember,
But-
Okay, I
the
tried
history
to ask
of
that before. I thought you said there wasn't an actual issue, but I misunderstood you, I guess.
I think she was saying that there's not an actual issue outside of an actual issue that we've run into outside of the preview final issue.
we won't run into I think we will not run into, I don't know. We haven't run into this because we haven't been checking the PDFs.
Yeah. There's not, we haven't been automated, or we haven't been doing anything with the downloaded files other than showing them and like letting them be available in like the archive at the end of the front end. We're not automatically doing anything with the file in the test itself, which would be the thing that is then breaking stuff. Yeah.
But the point is that people
my
check the
restating probably
files.
gets it.
The point is that people check the files, not that they're just there for no
Yeah.
reason. So if
No,
they
yeah.
get saved over each other, then they can't be both checked.
Right.
So it defeats the purpose of downloading the document there. So like we can take away the download the document step. That's also an option.
That doesn't, yeah, I don't. Just removing the step doesn't feel like a good solution.
But again, we're now thinking about situations where it's something other than the preview and final. So if we're going to choose between the two options, to me, it still feels cleaner to add the preview key to make it unique in assembly line versus changing the file name from what the interview author selected as the file name. Feels like it's better to leave it in the interview author's control to me.
Okay. In that case, we can put these other ideas in the download speed. There definitely is a download issue that's I think it's marked as a bug that says it takes the whole time to download the document. And that is a different question than the issue that I'm currently dealing with in my next PR. So, but it's a good question.
That said, like, I mean, I am not managing the Kiln project. I want to make sure, like, these are just my input. I'm not saying this is the way it has to be, for sure.
Yep. Just a shame it's taking the whole download time when it really only takes a couple seconds. Instead, it takes 30 seconds. So,
All right, so I'm going to mark this as discussed. It sounds like
yeah.
Rice is putting some of these notes on the issue.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay. So you wanted to talk about accessibility. Actually, I'm not sure who added this.
That was me. I put
Let's see,
that
Rice.
there.
Okay.
Which is just mostly everything should be in place now because they were like essentially ready for review. We don't have to do the review or anything, but mostly just pointing out that it is ready. The only thing that I haven't added yet is the documentation, but only because I want to have like an existing like personally, I go through and set everything up, and I can't go through and set everything up if it's not in
Yeah.
and killed yet. And so I want to go through, like, is get the feature in, set it up specifically for the EFSP docassemble interviews, and then once that's in, I'll have like a good experience of actually setting it up and like a working example of here are all the different moving components from the GitHub, like what you have to add to the GitHub action and what you need, and like what the scenarios need to look like and stuff. So
Sure. Okay, that's good to know. And I'll try and work on that this week. Very cool. Or we can look at it now. I don't know if that's a thing we want to do.
No. It's we could, but if we were so close to actually getting to everything. So I think we don't have to do it now. And we can do it synchronously this week.
Thanks, Bryce. That's really cool. It's a really cool feature.
I'm excited for it.
I mean, I think I can get like a little top level feedback on the multi-weaver stuff. If people have ideas, and we'll limit it to 15 minutes. Won't go over for that. Let's see. I just want to like describe like an overview of the approach that I'm taking right now, because it feels like a big change, but it also feels like the right change to me.
Okay.
So one of the big things that kicks this off is there's a bunch of places inside the Weaver where we assume there's one file that's been uploaded. And that happens in a couple different ways. Like one is we just assume there is one file. The other one is we assume once we've loaded that one file, there's one single document type that the whole interview is using.
Mhm.
So we assume it's always a PDF or always a docx. But once you allow uploading 2 files, you have to be able to deal with multiples in places, and you also have to be able to deal with a mixed set of options.
Okay.
One of the ways we were doing that early in the Weaver was we just had a bunch of hard-coded places where we loaded we checked for either strings or tuples in the list of raw fields, and we like just worked around that throughout a bunch of places in the code.
Yeah.
And what the big change I made is moving the first step. You're never handling raw fields in the YAML file. That's all processed in the module now, and it loads in a list of processed fields. That's a big change. The other change that kind of flowed from that is we had 3 different lists that we were maintaining and having to check in different parts of the code. We had a list called built-in fields, a list called fields, and a list called signatures.
Mhm.
And it's a bit complicated. First of all, that didn't really make sense. I don't really like that original design choice that it made. But specifically, once we started to load processed fields, we had to make some choices about when we did things like make certain fields into people and how that happened. Because we let people define people in, like a global way in the Weaver definition, basically, right? And we allow people to say, this is a person, it matches this pattern. I want you to make it into a person variable. So before we did that determination from the raw list of fields, once we make all the fields into field objects, we're doing it on a list of already processed fields. It no longer made sense to me to like parse out the list of the text from that field list and then say, hey, this is the thing we're going to want to check to see if it's a person or not. It made sense to move more of that logic into the field list class. So I made that switch, and instead of returning, I should figure out why that's not defined. Maybe that's just because I started typing something. Pylance goes crazy sometimes when you do that. So I made a method in DA field list that can identify the fields in the document that represent a person, or that may represent a person rather, and then processes them in place and says, yep, this is a person. It seems to be helpful for potentially this item potency problem we were trying to track down a while ago, where when you click the back button, some of the variables changed as well, because we're no longer processing a list in place in a way that won't be the same on each run of the code. Like we now have more functional code there where it will produce the same output on the same input each time. So I think that's a good refactor too.
Okay.
And then instead of having those separate lists, circling back to the reason why I started that thread of the conversation, there are methods on the list now that let you get either the built-ins, signatures, or the custom variables.
Okay.
So that's the high-level overview of the changes that I'm making. There's some other stuff that's happening, but that's a lot of changes. I want to make sure people agree with the direction of them. It might make it a little slower to merge this feature, which I'm actually personally fine with. It's not a rush to merge it.
Okay.
But make sure people agree with those architectural decisions, or at least, get some input on what people think about the direction. I can slow down and zoom out on the code if it's helpful.
Sure. High level, I like the abstractions. It seems Bryce agrees too. So
Yes.
I like these abstractions better than the ones we had before, for sure. Not sure how deep I can go at the moment. I think it'd be much more slow than we have time for. But just high level, it looks like some really good changes. Bryce?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think on Friday I tried starting an actual code review, and it was a bit not that bad unwieldy, but I was trying to only have it in GitHub, and that just wasn't working. Since this is a jumping around and moving a lot of different things in different places. So that was just I couldn't get through it in GitHub. I do probably need to at least go through the process, run it a bit and then take another look. But I don't remember, at least from what I saw, nothing looked too bad. And now that you've sort of overarchingly described the bigger changes, I agree with all of them. I think I was still confused. I think the conversation we had on Teams last week about treating stuff that comes from docx's. Oh yeah.
Oh sure.
So if the variable is named like it is in the PDF in a docx, we're gonna output that same docx variable, or we're gonna treat it exactly the same. And I was still confused on why technically that was required, because it doesn't seem like a change that we would want.
So yeah, I can probably find the code. So I do try to preserve the field, and now it's at a field level, what document type did this field come from? So either PDF or docx.
Okay.
But there is a step where we merge variables. And I didn't write that code. I don't think this consolidate duplicate fields.
Yeah.
So I tried to figure out if I knew what it was doing, and I might have missed something. So I just wanted to highlight, hey, if there's a PDF and a docx that have the same field name that get merged, I don't want it to really matter which one wins.
Okay.
And presumably that would only happen when it's a bare variable and not something that represents an object.
That's fair. Yeah.
If it's literally the same field name.
Yeah, I do think it's only gonna ever happen if it's a variable, where they would be somewhat distinct. I can take I can take a closer look at that consolidated duplicate fields, but I feel like we should just be able to if it's not the same, like exact same input or exact same name in the document itself and type of document, like if it's like, then we can keep those. Yeah, I still feel like we
Have
can
the
keep
field
them
twice.
just separate. Yeah. Or
Okay.
not have the field twice, but it would just be a, like it might be a little, like the author will have to put in work to make it a different field, because by default we would probably give it really similar looking names. But if they do that work, they can't just still be different fields. I don't know if that what I said makes any sense, but
Well,
at the
wait a
very least, I
second.
can take a look.
Well, I don't know if we do want to. Okay, I guess when we output the fields, we don't want to show two versions of the field ever, because the reason why they chose the same name is so that they were the same variable. Like they didn't have to answer two questions for the same thing.
Well, no.
No?
Okay, the example I'm thinking of, which maybe is not the same example that you're thinking of, is in, like, if you upload the two different documents in the PDF, say if you had like you not something concrete like phone numbers or something, but like users is going to court or something like that, like user 0 is going to court in the PDF, and then you decided for that to be, I can't think of like a legitimate reason why, but like I do feel like, for maybe not for something like that, but I do feel like there would be a case where you'd have a shorter name that is something like users going to court with underscores separated in the docx that looks identical to something in the PDF, even though the PDF is like some person variable or something like that that's getting expanded or changed somehow. But you just also in the docx you have a separate one with a similar name that doesn't, like, I don't, whether or not it's the right thing for the author to do. It does feel like something that would be very confusing if it just is silently merged with another field in a different document. My main point was to treat those separately and not automatically merge them, and or not like refuse to parse.
So there wouldn't be a user underscore some prefix, some suffix twice. There would be one that was the user underscore some prefix, and the one that got turned into a object that was from the PDF.
Okay, so we're still considering
Basically.
those differently then. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding this.
Something we could try to help people avoid this mistake, because I do think it's a mistake to have something that gets transformed and that doesn't. It would be very confusing for the author too, but in a way that they would have more control over. So I understand the impulse to like just follow the rules about what happens and not have it depend on what other documents they upload. But what if we warned them? Because this really only happens if there's a suffix in the PDF that gets transformed, and then the author uses that PDF like variable in the docx. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should really have a new validation step where we check for that kind of misuse of variable names in the docx. So it doesn't feel like something that we should let authors do.
A check where you test that a PDF like variable is not used in the docx. I like that. I think that's actually been a while coming, considering how we try and differentiate them in the documentation.
We do a check for Mako syntax being used in the docx, so it seems like in spirit with that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Because people could,
that does feel like the
literal
right
Mako is fine, right? Technically, right? Like could write that in your document, but probably it's a mistake when people do it. This feels the same.
Yes.
Like if you have user underscore has hair in both places.
That's fine, because we don't have custom suffixes. Or at least if we do, there would be loaded some way in the configuration where we wouldn't. Sorry, but yeah, maybe you meant to be like user 0 address state. That would be the example of the thing that would be transformed in the PDF, but not in the docx.
Sure.
Okay. Also, I forgot we didn't have custom suffixes. But at some point that was a thing. Or maybe we just talked about, maybe we talked about it being a thing. And
we did. We did
Okay.
think about
We
it.
did used to. I don't know if you were around when we used to, but yeah.
It broke some stuff, but I don't know if it would,
Okay.
if the only way to fix it was to remove that feature, but it did break some stuff with the way we had it set up with other parts of the code.
Cool. Okay. Okay, so that I think clarifies some things. And that would be the fix. Would be to actually have a better validation step. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Would we want this in the same PR, or are we thinking of this like a separate?
I think it's a
feature
separate
after this
feature.
one? Okay.
I mean, it would make sense to wait to add it until we've merged this, and maybe I can just combine it with the PR.
Okay. I think that makes sense though.
And you really probably shouldn't review this yet. I think the main thing I wanted was to talk through these big concepts, which we've done, but there's a lot of parts that are broken in this code still. So
Okay,
you may
fair.
not really want to pull it in and merge it yet, or try to test it
Or
by running it.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good. Because yeah, I had tried to look at it with the intention of getting the big concepts, but it was a bit hard, a bit difficult to grab it from the code.
Yeah. Maybe include an example because, oh, you did. Sorry. Didn't see that.
There might still be parts there where there's, I forget exactly what I said about the merged variables. Like this is one place where it definitely would come into play. If in my thread on Teams, I said there was any other place, maybe you would want to look at that code too, because that shouldn't wait for the rest of the code to be working the right way. There's just some weird stuff happening right now. The current state of the last commit that I did, where it makes you put in the field labels for the built-in variables, which isn't intentional. That was just something I just noticed today when I ran it. There's a lot of these like things to track down. So I definitely am going to try to, I think the change is worth the pain. I will try to do a lot of testing on my side, and then it will require a fair amount of testing to make sure everything still works the right way.
Okay.
Because it just changes a lot of things. I mean, I think in ways that removes code and simplifies it, so it's worth it. But
Yeah.
if I'm making things
I
that are
don't
more
have the-
complicated and I don't need to, you should tell me, and I'll try to make it simpler instead of more complicated, since it's already changing enough stuff.
Yeah. I don't have the energy to, but I wish I had the energy to just write a bunch of tests. You know, like
Yeah.
kiln
Yeah, I
tests
saw you
and
had
stuff.
refactored some of the tests. I don't know if those were helping at all or just getting in the way. But
I think the big problem was just this, something was happening with the test server, maybe, where they would fail like 3/4 of the time. And it wasn't, I think, because of the tests. It might have been something on the
Okay.
test server, or maybe it was the specific test that we'd written for Kiln. Or for the Weaver with Kiln.
Mm,
But yeah, it was just not. But they're running again now. They don't seem to be causing problems.
it's weird. I actually think if it was a timeout test, I think I have found an idea for dealing with timeout issues, but
Okay.
we'll have to wait till I'm up for that a bit more, or if someone else can take up the mantle, I have a description of how to do it. Bryce and I have talked about it a little bit.
yeah, that's the one we talked about.
Yeah. Which I'm like super excited about, theoretically speaking, if it all works out.
I
'Cause
still
I've been
have this
trying to solve
interview.
this for like 2 years.
I still have this interview where there's like 500 docx templates that takes forever. You helped me with that a little early on, Michelle, and
Yeah.
I still haven't been able to run the AL Kiln tests on it. But I know you
Oh,
are
okay.
busy and recovering, so I
Yeah.
might need your
yeah.
input at some point. But
All right.
I might appreciate your input. I don't necessarily
Sure.
want to demand
Yeah,
your
yeah,
time, 'cause I know you have a
no.
lot of stuff.
No, totally.
Maybe the right
Yeah.
way to do it is to just not have 500 templates in the repository. It's just a bigger change that I probably.
Yeah. Well, I would say first try running it with like one template. Like that would be my first suggestion. and see if something is broken just fundamentally with what you have. And then if that works, then, you know, etc.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do know it can take like 10 minutes to download it, which is not, I mean, it does not take 10 minutes to do a Git pull on my local machine, even with the 500 templates, because they're not that big. So
Mhm.
there's probably places where the docassemble code is inefficient,
Mm, okay.
but that seems to be the big problem. It just takes too long to do it. I mean, it's definitely a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
All
that's
right.
why I don't know if I can justify testing it one at a time, because the goal is to test all of them. And
Well, no,
yeah,
I don't mean,
and
I
know
just
that's gonna
mean
be broken
like,
too.
I just mean try it one with just one, not one at a time. Just try it with one and see if it passes. And then after that, like that differentiates at least whether there's a problem with the, you know, test itself, like the story table, or whether the problem really is with the fact that there are 500. And then, you know, that's a different problem to deal with.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe if I have a chance to go back to that, maybe I should just make sure there's not some other error, because there definitely could be. I haven't used the Kiln framework that much from scratch myself,
Sure.
and it's a new feature.
Yeah. Or I can take a look at it when I get the chance.
Well, I'm not trying to ask you to do that, because I know
Yeah.
you have a lot. So
Yeah.
it just
Well,
made me
we'll
think I
see.
should. It seemed
Yeah.
like it might be related to the timeout thing.
Yeah. It might be. Yeah, I'd have to, yeah. All right. Cool.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We did go 5 minutes over, but
That's pretty good though
That's
for our track record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Take care.